In the fall of every year at Nettleton High School, Friday night means one thing: football.
Rate of pride, we got some. Rate of pride, we got some. Rate of pride, we got some. We got some. We got some.
It's hard to imagine it any other way.
Rate of pride, we got some.
But there was a time when football did not exist at Nettleton. But then, in 1965, a group of visionary men and brave boys started the Nettleton Raider football program. This is their story, in their words.
I was a little bit disappointed because when I was a kid growing up in Tennessee, I played Little League football from 3rd grade to 6th grade before we moved here. So when I came here and they didn't have football, I was upset. I went home when I found out they didn't have football, and I said, I can't believe we moved to this godforsaken place. What are y'all trying to do to me? And so my mom and dad, they said, well, you know, you just can learn to play basketball.
Before we got the football team, the main thing that occupied our time was a thing called field smear. I don't know if they still do that or not, but it's basically you get the ball and everybody tries to tackle you. And so that kind of led into our first year of football.
I think it took probably a little while to get the motion going in that direction. What had happened in '61, they'd quit having baseball, primarily because it went split term because it was a summer sport. And there had too much bad weather to play baseball early while school was still in session. So I guess as a substitute, in a couple of years, they decided to go with football.
Well, Gerald Watkins was a superintendent, and he had different parents who had said something to him about football, and basically it was because that every student was not prepared or physically endowed to play basketball, but many of them had the bodies that could play football. So in order to get more participation, it was decided he went and talked to the board.
Of course, everyone knows football is a lot more expensive sport to get into as far as the facility, the keeping of the grounds, and the equipment, that the paraphernalia that the football players wear.
And they had to do a lot of things because at that time it was a financial burden to get into football.
And my grandfather's on the school board, so I know some of the rumblings, about, this is going to cost this much, this is going to cost that much to have football.
Nettleton was not a rich district. And they had to do what they could do piecemeal.
Dad was involved because he was on the school board, and there were a number of school board members. Hugh Heath was one, Tom Martis was one, I think Gary Smith was one, and Bill Roddy was also on the school board. And there were several of the board members wanted to get a football program started at Nettleton to expand, because they knew if they do football, then the band's going to follow, and the school would grow, and it would be a good thing for all the students that attended.
The way I understand it, there were some of the students, they wanted to play football and stuff, and they started talking up, and of course one of the students happened to be the superintendent's son, and so that was easy to get his ear.
James has told the story, I think, about he and George Stem and me doing some politicking to get football to Nettleton. And they were really, really wanting it, and I was acting like I really wanting it, thinking, this might hurt. I'm not sure, I don't know a lot about football, but it looks pretty violent. But anyway, it happened, much to my surprise, and thought, well, I'm obligated now. I've at least got to go out and, make the effort.
Brent Watkins was a good friend of mine. I remember Gerald lining up a meeting. This is the first memory I have of the football is they had a meeting at the cafetorium. And Smokey Yarbrough showed up, and we're all sitting out front just to see him. We didn't know the guy. And I'll never forget the first time I saw him walking down the sidewalk. He had a pipe in his mouth and had one of those dressed black hats on. And I just thought, he's a little guy, but he had that attitude. And I thought, all right, so he met with the parents and the players that want to play football. And I know me and Brent were standing out front waiting on him and thought, just wondering what football would be like, And he met the parents and the players that first night. Talked to us about it. Told us what it was going to be if we wanted to play,
And the football coach was Don Yarbrough, who was coming in from Jonesboro. And So my job was to sell and encourage and get all of them out, and we did at that time. Tell any student that came out, he would guarantee to play every game, which we lived with.
Well, you had a lot of guys that really wanted to play sports that didn't play basketball, and it really gave them an opportunity. You know, Brent Watkins, good friends of mine, Jim Powell. I remember Maxie, my brother, would have been a good football player. Kenneth Newcomb would have been a great one. But they decided early on, we're not going to waste any of our senior basketball players. None of them can play. So they wouldn't let them come out even though they wanted to.
It was decided since the 12th grade boys who played on the basketball team were already getting to be in athletics, and so we're trying to build a program, that they wouldn't play football. And we had some good athletes in high school basketball that would have made that football program that year better, but that wasn't the purpose of the program. The purpose was to establish a program and go on.
A lot of excitement. Everybody in the school wanted to play. Seemed like there wasn't hardly anybody that didn't come out and try, and except us basketball players. And but one day I was at work, and my dad was building a house during the summer, and George came over and he said, Coach Yarbrough wants to talk to you. I told him that you could punt. We can't find anybody on the team that can punt the ball. And we used to practice that all the time out in the yard. You know, I thought that one day I might go to college and be able to punt because, you know. Anyway, I went out there and practiced it, tried it out, and Yarbrough said, well, we want you to do the punting. And even in practice, they protected me. You know, they wouldn't let me get hit because they didn't want me to get hurt. So that's the way football started here with me.
Maxie's the only senior that played basketball that got to come out and play football because we had to have a punter.
We had nobody that could even punt the ball at all. So the superintendent gave us an okay to let Maxie punt. He couldn't play anywhere else, but he could punt.
And Yarbrough said, all right, you're our punter. Bridger said, well, he's my basketball player. And he said, well, we'll put the equipment on him, but we won't let him get hit. He's just going to be a punter. And what's funny is then they started trying to find a deep snapper.
We didn't have anybody to center the ball. Nobody ever centered it. So Maxie said, well, George, who was his little brother, I think he's probably a 10th grader, little kid, said he centers to me at home, so okay, George, you're the center.
And everybody tried it, and I'm just sitting over there watching, and Maxie finally said, hey, George can do it. He does it for me all the time at home. And Yarbrough said, all right, get down there, and I deep snapped it real good, you know, this 15-yard. And Maxie taught me how to do that at home. He said, all right, you're going to be our deep snapper. And I said, yeah, but I'm too little. He said, we'll figure that out, you know.
George didn't realize they're going to hit you when they centered the ball. And the first time he centered the ball to Maxie, they knocked him about 3 feet back to it. He come over there, he didn't know if he's going to want to be center or not.
So they come up with a play where they could hold me up, you know, after I deep snap it, keep from having a hole right there, you know.
But then we started putting where the guards would put their legs intertwined with him to keep him getting knockbacks for. But he was tough, he hung with it, but we just didn't have anybody that could center the ball other than him.
And then in the meantime, I had to figure out how to gain weight.
The thing about our first year of football, they wouldn't let any of the seniors play for, I don't know why, you know, other than the fact that you had people like Kenneth Newcomb that would try to run through a wall, you know, without a helmet.
The day we got the equipment, he put a helmet on, just rammed his head in the block wall over there in the dressing room.
He was a senior who played on the basketball team, and really and truthfully, he would have been a great football player because he was rough and tough, and he wanted to play football, so he begged. Let me preface that by saying that we did not allow senior high seniors who were on the basketball team to play football because we were trying to build a program and they were already participating in something. So as a result, he could not play on the football team, but so he wanted to manage it. And we give him the helmets the first day, and of course he just thought if you had that helmet on, you destructive him. We're all standing there and we hear a real crack. He runs in the wall as hard as he can. Of course it knocks him down, about knocks him out, but he was tested. He thought if you had a helmet on, you was indispensable.
Something my grandson said to me a couple of months ago when I was talking to him about coming out and that we were going to have a little bit of a celebration of the 50-year anniversary of our first football team. He said, Papa, did y'all wear leather helmets then?
We'd never lifted weights. We'd never had a weight program. We just played basketball. And back then, you really didn't have a weight program. I think I made their first bench press we ever had for football. I built it because my dad's a carpenter, and I built a wooden bench press and brought it down here, and we used it for, that was our weight program when I was in the 10th grade.
One thing that sold me on football in school, it really alleviated a lot of bullying. We had a lot, at that time, we had kids who kind of thought they were tough and they bullied around. And you'd be surprised when they got that equipment on, they wasn't near the bully they thought they were. And a lot of those kids who thought they were something turned out not to be. And it really helped the bullying situation on campus.
I thought it was great. You know, I always liked football. That was one of my favorite sports. But I thought football would be great for Nettleton.
Oh, we were excited. You know, we got to talking, we'd get together, so we're gonna have football, and somebody say, well, how do you play? Well, I don't know. I guess they'll show us that, you know, but it sounds like it's gonna be fun.
In fact, we played about where the field is now. We practiced, the field was I'm gonna say, between the gym and where the next building is now, there was a field there then. And that's where we practiced. It was comical to a certain extent. Now, you're talking about a bunch that most of them had never seen a football game.
We didn't know anything. We didn't have those skills. We didn't have Pee Wee football and junior high football leading into our senior year. We had some seniors. It was the first time I never played football.
I personally had never watched a football game before our initial year of football, and didn't know the difference between a running back, quarterback, lineman, nothing.
I guess the most exciting time and one of the funniest times when they first got their equipment. If you can imagine, 30-something boys, I guess, probably around there, first time they'd ever seen, they didn't know where the pads went. It was very comical and quite enlightening. And first time we went out on the field, we had to send them back in and rework some of the pads and all that.
First time I put my pads in, I had them pointed the wrong way, like killing me. You know, we were just totally new.
He did first practice. We all come out to practice. We don't know what we're doing. It's football, you know, nobody's ever done it.
And it was a trying year.
He says, all right, you guys get lined up. We're going to pick them up. We're going to dive out there on the ground on our bellies, you know, hands and feet up in the air. And everybody just kind of looked at him like, what are you talking about? Anyway, we all pick him up, and he blew the whistle, and we all just kind of laid down. He said, no. He said, let me show you. And this guy, we thought he was old, but he's probably about, I guess he wasn't even 40 when he came here. But anyway, he showed us. He picked him up, and he just dived out through there with his hands and feet up in there, landed on his chest, and got up and said, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, he didn't knock the breath out of him or anything, so we kind of got the point. But he did it by demonstration, everything. He had to show us because we didn't know anything. Nobody knew a thing about football.
We didn't have the basics of tackling, blocking, running the ball. So it was all new to us.
We didn't even know the basics of how to get warmed up. When he had us do things like diving on the ground, you know, we didn't know what that meant. We tried to let ourselves down easy. He had to teach us, you got to kind of beat yourself up and get used to the pounding and the beating. So he taught us that. And another thing he told us we'd never heard of, he said, we're going to have 30-second fits. That means when I don't blow the whistle, you find somebody and you tear into them. Y'all don't stop roughing each other up. I mean, like fighting till the whistle blows. So anyway, he didn't blow the whistle after a play we thought was dead. So people like me, I was a little 10th grader again, so I picked out a buddy of mine, Mike Payton. We said, hey, when this happens, me and you'll just kind of act like we're really going at it. So what's funny is one day he had a 30-second fit, and I saw Mike Payton, so I jumped on his back. Well, it turned out it was Dub Newell. I messed up. Dub weighed about 270. He turned around and saw what I was doing. He started slapping me around, pounding me in the ground, you know. But anyway, we just figured out how to get by.
I can remember a little incident that happened was that at that time I was still in pretty good shape and could run, and I was fast as any boy we had at school probably, but anyway, he couldn't get anybody to simulate, so he had me put shoulder pads and a helmet on and play quarterback.
Bridger told Yarborough one day, let me go put my suit on. He went and suited up, put on the pads. I don't know he'd ever played football, but he thought he knew what to do.
And I could throw the ball a little bit, so we're out there and, you know, I'm doing pretty good.
He got out there going to run the offense, and I remember Dub Newell and some of those guys that was on defense said, so we need to hit him or not? And he said, don't worry about it.
he got a little bit upset, and I remember he told him, said, we got to get the quarterback. Needless to say, the next play, one of them hit me from then on, his hands off.
So the first time he took a lick from then on, Coach Bridge, he had Yarborough blowing the whistle anytime he got close to him. Dub couldn't wait to zero in on him once, you know.
I believe it was Dub, but I don't know. And let me tell you something, that was the greatest thing that happened the whole practice. Boy, they got down thrilled about that, but I said, last lick.
He really tried to help Yarborough. We didn't have enough talent, people that really understood. And I think Bridger just had seen a lot of it. I don't know if he ever played any. So suiting up and trying, I respected that when he suited up and tried to show the defense how to might run a scout offense. So I do remember him doing that. He tried to help Bridger every way he could, but he went a step too far that day. I think he backed off a little after that.
We were tough guys, though. We had some tough cats on that first team. You know, Wayne Dorton, Doug Newell, Maxie Stem, George, James Clayton. I mean, that's pretty tough guys that had a lot of talent.
But I was on the chain gang. Paul Vitato, Mike Tosh, and I were basketball players. So they gave us, we got in the game free, and we got to, so I was on the field and I saw some of the brutal hits that the guys took, and I could see Dorton coming around the corner. And I was praying to the Lord that he stayed on the field and didn't come over toward where we was at, because some of the football players primarily said that whenever they was at practice, whenever they was doing a sweep and they saw Dub, they knew that Dorton was behind him, and they didn't want any part of it. But they, you know, of course, Smokey, he would chew them up if they didn't stand there, and because he said, you've got to take it now to teach these boys what it's going to be like in the game, because them guys aren't going to run away.
Basically, one thing that they had to learn was that because you went out there and tried to hit that guy as hard as you could, you know, they've been participating in basketball where it's kind of a finesse game. And it took a while to learn. It didn't take many licks on the other side to learn that you hit the first lick. And I think that was what they were dealing with at first, was the fact that it was a physical game and it was all right to be physical.
Almost every other practice, some player would break out and get ready to run, all of a sudden he'd fall over, because the guys wasn't used to wearing spikes, you know, as we used to wearing tennis shoes. Well, them old spikes back in, they would grab the turf. Well, they would fall over, and Smokey would go over and he'd pick up a twig of grass and look, so, is that what tripped you? There's going to be players on the other team. You know, you got to learn to pick your feet up and everything. Of course, I remember him telling them to lift your feet, and drive and everything.
I do remember very vividly about the third or fourth day climbing on my little Honda, and I almost didn't make it home because I could barely hold the handlebars. I was so tired and sore and cramping that every time I'd hit a little bump or something, I'd almost lose it. I could barely stay on my motorcycle, but I didn't know a person could work that hard and live. But one thing Coach Yarborough always said was no one ever died from hard work, and we were young and green enough we believed him. You know, that's not necessarily true, but anyway, it got us through. So.
The Raiders hit the road and played their first game in history against the Panthers of Lepanto on Friday, September 17th, 1965.
Actually, I just remember all we prepared for was Lepanto. We, from the very first day of practice, preparing for that first game.
When they took the field, I thought, well, this is going to be bad. You know, and yeah, there were some embarrassing moments.
I remember the first time, Party and I, we were going to run a reverse, and we ran into, you know, smack dab at each other.
To tell you about the uneducation part of the students and the players and the cheerleaders, there was a cheerleader I was standing next to, and there was ball game was going on, and so the defense had stopped them, and so our offense went out on the field, and so everyone lined up. Well, we ended up fumbling the ball. Well, then here comes Jeff Couch and them back off the field, and Dub and everybody, and the cheerleader looked at me and said, them guys can't be tired, they just got on the field. She didn't understand the concept of offense and defense.
The Raiders fell behind 7-0 after a special teams blunder led to a Lepanto score.
The first game, I was a good deep snapper, and all the 3 years I did it, I never centered it over the punter's head except one time. That's the first time we ever did it live. We went to Lepanto that first game. I centered it over Maxie's head, and he had never been hit in practice because they didn't have him getting hit. He had to go back and pick it up and run it, and they back killed him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, George, my brother, he was about 120 pounds. and he's playing center because he snapped the ball. He's a good snapper. He can snap it back there on a tight spiral, and he's really good at that. He snapped it back to me, but it went just, I even had to jump up because it went out of my reach, went over my head, so I had to turn. This is the first time this had happened. I think he's a little nervous because he knew he was going to get creamed by those guys. But it went over my head, and I had to run all the way back almost to their end zone to pick it up. And by the time I turned and picked it up, their guys was already coming in on me, and I looked to my left and looked to my right, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and they just creamed me, sandwiched me. I held on to the ball, but it didn't matter. They got the ball, and
he centered one over Maxie's head. And here come, Maxie finally get in the game. Boy, and they clobbered him. He come over that sideline looking for George, his little brother.
Well, he was my big brother. See, he's a senior and I was a little 10th grader.
But I got over on the sideline, and I went over and I grabbed George and I shook him, and I slapped him upside the head on the helmet, and I said, man, don't ever do that again to me. They like to kill me out there.
And he comes to the sidelines and slapped me in the head and said, what'd you do that for? And I said, I was scared, I was nervous.
The Raiders came roaring back in the second quarter. Halfback Johnny Pardue scored the first touchdown in school history to cut the Lepanto lead to 7-6 going into halftime.
We played better than I anticipated.
The Raiders' defense held the Panthers scoreless in the third period, and the offense started the fourth quarter with a potentially game-winning drive. Unfortunately, rookie mistakes and some less than helpful officiating cost the Raiders a chance to go ahead.
And we had a chance to win. We were driving for the winning score in the last part of the game. And we had no one who knew the rules enough to and I always kind of held it against officials because we run a play on fourth down. They had a 5-yard penalty. That 5-yard penalty would give us a first down. We only made about 4 yards on it, and so they said, you want the ball here, or they didn't say, if you take the penalty, you got a first. This kid didn't know. They give the ball over to them. And by the time we got out there and tried to do so, they wouldn't let us change. No, your captain made this decision, and I don't think it was intentional on their part. But that was a thing that really stuck in my mind, that it might have turned that whole season around.
The following Friday, the 0-1 Raiders traveled to Harrisburg, where they received a rude welcome from the Hornets.
I remember one time in the beginning they would pull trick plays on us. These coaches knew that we were just starting a football program. And of course, Coach Yarborough couldn't teach us everything. So there was one play at Harrisburg where they lined up, they had the ball, and they were lined up on the field with all their linemen on one side of the field and the quarterback and the center on the other side of the field. And we didn't know what to do. All our linemen lined up over with the other guys because we were supposed to, Coach Yarborough said, you line up against these tackles and guards and everything. And all of a sudden they ran a play, the center snapped the ball to the quarterback and he just ran it down for a touchdown. Trick play, we didn't know what to do. We were standing around like, what in the world's going on? And before anybody could call a timeout, they had already run the touchdown. It was kind of sad. Harrisburg we didn't like.
Harrisburg routed the Raiders 40-12, the most lopsided loss of the season. But the Raiders did manage to open up the offense some. Halfback Wayne Dorton hit tight end George Ring for a 55-yard touchdown pass. And Johnny Pardue scored on a touchdown run up the middle, giving the Raiders a little momentum going into their Week 3 matchup against Jonesboro's JV team. Just 4 days after the loss to Harrisburg, Nettleton played a rare Tuesday night game at Jonesboro's Woodland Field, where they lost to the much more experienced Hurricane 33-12.
I remember the Jonesboro game, and those guys were experienced. Man, they had been playing forever, and we gave them a run for their money, though.
Then on Thursday afternoon, October 14th, the 65 Raiders played against the Mark Tree Indians JV squad in their very first home game. A big Nettleton crowd braved an icy cold wind to support the Raiders.
Oh, yeah, we had a great turnout. People in town would come around each night. We had our games. It was good.
Halfback Johnny Pardue rushed for 40 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of which came on a 4th down double reverse, but the Indians pulled out a hard-fought 14-12 win. The Raiders threatened to win the game late. Lynn Tosh returned to punt 23 yards. Then Wayne Dorton hit George Ring with a 25-yard pass that put the Raiders on the Indian 12-yard line with a minute to play. However, the Mark Tree defense stiffened and denied the Raiders their first win. The Raiders ended their 65 season at home, once again facing the Jonesboro JV team, who had routed them earlier in the year. This time, the game was a lot closer, as the Hurricane prevailed by 13 points against a steadily improving Nettleton team.
We just didn't quite have the experience, that the young team had. They come in there seasoned teams and everything, and we was trying to just play hard enough to make up for the difference.
We played them a real good game.
Coach sent me in the last of the game as a receiver because I liked, to maybe throw a touchdown, but James couldn't get the ball to me. He tried, he couldn't get it to me.
The Raider defense held Jonesboro scoreless in the second half, giving the new program reason for optimism heading into their first offseason.
We were 0-5, but we played them pretty tough in our first year.
As far as they were concerned, it's been a successful season. They'd learned how to put the pads on. They'd learned to play as a team, and they'd got the chance to participate.
For a initial season, I thought we never failed to score against anybody. We scored on everybody we played. We played all the top teams. Most of the time we played their third and fourth teams. Some of their, I think, nephews and nieces come in and played, but we still scored.
The thing that's amazing about this, you never heard anybody complaining. Now, if you go out there and lose like we did, they'd be wanting to tear the. Hey, no complaint. They were just happy to be there and good support. If you want to go through a losing season, you can never go through one that was any better than that because they were just happy you were there. It's a shame we can't be more like that now if you go out and do the best you can do, and if you still don't win, well, you've done the best you can do.
We never got discouraged because we got beat. I mean, we figured, well, we're just started. We're going to learn. We're going to get better. And when we played teams like Mark Tree, Harrisburg, Pocahontas, all we felt like was, we're going to learn, and eventually we'll get to you. And we did.
The Raiders picked up their first victory during the 66 season, a 13-0 win at Pocahontas. And in 1967, in just their third year of playing football, the sophomores of 65 led the Raiders to a winning season. Perhaps the postseason article in the Jonesboro Sun said it best. With the sweet taste of victory becoming more and more common in the Nettleton camps, a football tradition has begun to take shape.
Well, they've all been said before, all the usual, great coach, great person, but looking back on it with the experience of almost a lifetime now, I knew it then, but at 15, anyone 25 years older and with some kind of position of authority, you think someone you're going to respect and do. But looking back, he was a very easy man to respect. He didn't command respect, you just gave it to him. He just deserved it and was one of the nicest people it's ever been my privilege to know. If he had any shortcomings, he might have been a little too nice to be a football coach. But luckily, whatever he lacked in the mean quotient, Coach Bridger made up for, so it balanced out really nicely. And of course, Coach Bridger's a very good sport about it, and he passed on a lot of knowledge, and he was really a good coach also.
Well, he was a principled man, a good man. They called him Smokey. Why, I don't know, but that was his nickname.
He's Smokey. He was Smokey. He was a man's man. I mean, he was straight as a string. I mean, you pull it tight, he was straight. Whatever he said was the way it went.
Oh, I love Coach Yarbrough. He's became a dear person in my life, you know, because he followed me all the way through my career in college and talked to him all the time. And I still asked him for advice, you know. I mean, I'd ask him, and I thought he was, well, an exceptional person to take 70 kids that barely watched football and teach them the game of football in one season. You know, like I said out there before, you know, few things he forgot to tell us until game time, you know, and which way to go and stuff. But we picked that up pretty quick.
He was a funny guy, had an attitude about him. He acted like a tough guy, but the nicest guy he could be. After I got to know him, after I got out of school, he's a tough guy back in school, you know.
Coach Yarbrough was a fantastic person. Really, I miss him.
Oh, Coach Yarbrough was a real godly man, a Christian man. He taught good work ethic. He taught good practice, you know. Kept everybody on their toes. And of course, if you didn't, he'd get in your face. And I remember that ring he had. He'd thump people on the helmet with that ring, and that thing rang your bell.
He had a college ring that was as big of a ring that anybody had saw on campus. And he would use, I guess it would be brutality today, but he would turn that ring around if someone was acting up. He would pop you on the head. And I had it done one time, and I didn't want no more. But the players with the helmets on, he would pop that, and it would ring their ears. They didn't want no part of it. He was a rough, tough, raw-bone guy.
He'd turn that ring around if you was coming off the field and you'd done something really stupid. He'd turn that ring around and hit you in the helmet. Well, you get in trouble for that nowadays. But
Well, you know, I mainly remember Smokey Yarbrough, our coach. He was just a tremendous guy, man. He was like a father figure to us. Tough, get in your face, spit out chewing tobacco all over you.
When I go to practices and Smokey be chewing that tobacco and everything, you had to, if you didn't watch out, you ended up with freckles because he'd end up spitting all over you and everything by accident and everything.
And he'd be chewing you out and grab your face mask, and he chewed tobacco, so he was spitting in your face the whole time he was hollering at you.
Coach Yarbrough, he was a great guy. You know, and he was a good football coach. He was. I enjoyed playing for him. We wanted to play hard for him, and we did play hard for him.
Yeah, Coach Yarbrough and Coach Bridger did a fantastic job. I mean, you take two, how does two coaches coach a football team? Well, you could, if you asked the coach now to do that, they would laugh at you.
And I'll say this, I feel good in helping, but nowhere do I want to take the credit for being Coach Yarbrough did the coaching.
I don't know how he kept his hair, what little hair he had left, and he had a lot of hair. That man was hairy.
But he stayed after James Clayton all the time because James was his quarterback, and James was he kind of ran his own place sometimes.
I did my own thing, and he just, we just butted heads. I mean, you can see in my senior annual where he told me, he said, dang your buttonhole, you ain't got nothing but sawdust between your ears. So that was his saying to me from the time that he arrived here to I graduated.
Dang your buttonholes, Clayton. Yeah, I'll never forget, he used that all the time.
I coached for 36 years, and a lot of things that I did really came from Coach Yarbrough. Instead of saying most of those kids, dang your buttonhole or daggum your butthole, I always said dang your butt. You know, he never cussed on the football field, and those 36 years I coached, I never cussed on the football field, and I think that's one of the things that I just think that's a good trait in a football coach.
Well, I feel the same way about going, you know, when I went to Arkansas State. That was new ground to me there, just like it was at Nettleton. But I wouldn't even been prepared for that had it not been for the 2 years that Smokey had worked with me here.
Because when you go into boot camp and they're, you know, and especially in the Marine Corps, they're pretty hard on you. And I'd see guys that would fold up under that stuff. But you know, I learned a lot about staying with stuff and being persistent and not giving up. And I think I learned that from Coach Yarbrough because he was really serious about that. That was one thing he planted in everybody's head. Don't give up. And we didn't.
All the success that I had during my coaching career is due to probably the way that he treated me and how he handled me, being as stubborn as I was, because I had a bunch of kids all those years that were basically like me.
He was a top-of-the-line person. I mean, I couldn't say anything bad about it.
I'm a better person to have played basketball for him and then to being around the man, because he's just the type of guy that was just a good father figure.
I don't think they could have got anybody better than Coach Arbrola.
Got along well with the boys, well respected by them. Never was belligerent to them. I mean, he's good for the program. He couldn't have picked a better one.
It's special. It really is. The fact that it was the first 3 teams here at Nettleton does make it special. It gives a little extra poignance when I think back on it. So I hate to say proud, but I am proud of it.
You know, this program has really grown and through the years, and we were right there at the first of it.
It showed that people from Nettleton did have a backbone and they did have pride.
As far as players and being on the field and our aggressiveness and play, I think we were respected.
It was a great bunch of guys that we played for. We wanted to lay a good foundation for Nettleton, and I think we've done that.
People respected everybody that went out on that first team here at Nettleton.
Nettleton's got a great reputation, I think, around as being a tough.
Nettleton tough. We stuck with them. Sure did.
I don't think there was another team out there any tougher than what Nettleton was.
I'm a firm believer that any extracurricular activity benefits a school. I think that to be successful, every student needs to feel like he belongs to something. And be it basketball, football, choir, band, whatever.
Well, look at the lives that impacted here. I mean, so from the football, we got a band program. Because we got a football program started here at Nettleton. It gave me something to look forward to for the rest of my time at Nettleton. It was a big impact, big impact.
The band, they started a band, and cheerleaders got to cheer at football games. Everything was new. And it's just like buying a new automobile or something. When it's new, you know, you just cherish it. And those are the memories that I'll have, you know, the rest of my life.
I feel real good about it, and we owe a lot to Mr. Watkins and the board for doing it. And then we owe a lot to those young men who come out there the first time and started it.
No, the biggest thing is I just think football's like most other sports. It creates a camaraderie that you wouldn't have without it. Because like there's a small group of basketball players back then. But this group right here, the ones that are still around, every one of these guys are like buddies. And that wouldn't happen if we hadn't had football.
And you could see the camaraderie between them guys. Even though some of them guys hadn't seen each other in probably 50 years, they have a bond, a fellowship that no one can take away from them.
Well, I was really honored to be on that team because there's a lot of good players on there.
The bunch of boys that we played football with on the first team, they was all great guys and everything.
You're talking about a country school that never played a lick of football. And then you start a football program in '65. And just the pride of being on that first football team, it just, to me, just starting that first year of football was just tremendous for Nettleton.
Well, I think that was huge because Nettleton was just one of a lot of basketball schools. You know, after we got football, you had people like Valley View and West Side, Monette, and all these people we were always just competitive with, Bay, basketball. They stayed there, and Nettleton became a football team. But I think it really helped Nettleton step up and become a competitor, you know, with people besides just basketball schools. People like Jonesboro, Paragould, people around here that played football had to learn to respect Nettleton too, you know.
George's good. He's a good football player. He ended up getting Sun Player of the Week a few times as he got up in his senior year and was a running back and a defensive back. So all these boys turned out to do pretty good. And Wayne Dorton, real proud of him because he was on our basketball team, and, you know, All-American, pros. So all these guys coming up, you know, and Gene Bradley come along after I graduated, of course. And so these guys really made a good mark for Nettleton, I thought.
There's no question that the program's put out some some good athletes and some good football players. But bigger than that, they put out a lot of good citizens.
We've had some individuals here that are Raiders,
You know, I'll always be a Nettleton Raider.
and they're Raiders to the bone.
That's right, Raider pride. Amen.
I'm just proud to be a Nettleton graduate and be a part of that first football program.
I'm proud to be part of it, I know that.
I just hope that those young men who performed those and everything realize how important they were and what they did and how much it means to history. They laid the foundation. I guess it's like, and this may be a little extreme, but sort of like a kid being drafted in the Army. They went and they served and they did their part, and they should be proud of it because they were forerunners. They helped establish something, and that should be looked upon favorably by everybody who took part in it.
They may not have won a game, but they finished the season as champions. They laid the foundation for all of us from Nettleton, and they hoisted high the beloved banner of Raider pride. In 1965 and forever.
Ever